Innovators 10th anniversary summit. It's exciting that you guys have been around for so long and providing us with such amazing content. And so Kristen, how are you doing today? Well, can't hear you.
Here we are. I said I'm doing very, very well. I'm actually in our office. It feels amazing to be at HQ for this conversation.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah. So, when we set this up with Brand Innovators, the theme we were given was pretty broad: strategies to win consumers in the coming decade. And I think that opens up the doors for so many different things for us to talk about. But what I first want to get into is Pernod on a whole, and what your core purpose is. You guys talk about unlocking the magic of the human connection. So especially over this past year, when people really couldn't be together and human connection has been something that we've all been missing and craving, how are you guys still able to convey this purpose within your marketing campaigns?
Yeah, it's certainly been a real challenge, especially I think, for our industry, as creators of conviviality. It is our role, as you said, to unlock the magic of human connection. And that was a difficult thing in a year when people couldn't really be together, of course, right? So we tried to get creative with it. I think one of the best examples would have been Jameson for this St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
And we encouraged our consumers to take the afternoon off and celebrate. And the reason that we did so really is born of an insight that COVID accelerated, like so many things. But we know that Americans have been leaving significant vacation time on the table for years. And that kind of always on work culture has become a real challenge. And it's certainly something that stands in the way of us connecting authentically with one another, which is something we want to be at the core of. So we launched St. Patrick's Time Off. And Jameson encouraged everyone to keep the spirit of St. Patrick's Day alive and celebrate safely, but make the time to raise a glass. And it was just a campaign full of, I think, feel-good spirit, came with a bit of hope, right? A bit of celebration, things that have been absent for a while. And we got so much engagement from consumers, so much positive feedback, so much social chatter, so much amplification of how they were celebrating, and it really resonated.
That's great. Just side question to that. Do the other brands see that and be like, oh my God, we need to try to capture that magic in a bottle too?
We're definitely on a journey to make sure that each of our brands really understands its right to win, right? And uniquely what it does for consumers. I think as a spirits company, though, I would be remiss to say, yes, all of our brands would like to be number one in all the holidays and all the drinking occasions. But I think no argument that Jameson has the right to own St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, and a good brand to marry with St. Patrick's Day for sure. So I think one of the things that's been so interesting these days is that it's very fair to say that consumers don't only care about the product they're buying these days, but also the values of the company that they're buying from and how that company is reacting to everything out there, global affairs, things like that. So what have you guys done over there to strengthen the trust among your consumers from a corporate social responsibility standpoint?
Yeah, that's one that we've been, thinking a lot about because our CEO, Ann McCurgy, has been very vocal about, not only a return on investment for our shareholders, but the concept of much more broadly a return on responsibility, right? Doing right by our consumers, our stakeholders, and society at large. And I think the brand that is really leading the charge there is Absolut with its drink responsibly work. So Valentine's Day, first of its kind, February 2020, was a great example of when we launched Drink Responsibly, Sex Responsibly. And it was the first time that, a company in our industry really got into the fray of the conversation around drinking and consent. Mm-hmm. We certainly made sure that we had the right to be in that conversation. We commissioned some, very specific research. And, to your point, 60% of people between the age of 21 and 30 believe that companies should take a stand on a concept like sexual consent. Most of them have talked about consent with their friends and their family, and on a bit of the more serious side, 69% of sexual assaults that occur on a college campus involve a perpetrator who's been drinking. So, it was important for us to take a stand. We launched the campaign, kind of explored the chronology of a date and the things that can happen there and what the different stages of consent are that we may or may not be so consciously aware of. It could be another drink, it could be swiping right, it could be sharing a ride to the next destination, right? But our point was to make it clear that only a yes to sex is a yes. So we also partnered with Brain, the country's largest anti-sexual violence organization. They were a collaborative partner in the campaign. We made sure that the creative and the activation strategy and the messaging were powerful, but also appropriate. We launched on Valentine's Day. And it was our highest single day of engagement with the brand in history. Overwhelmingly positive reaction. We also partnered with Rain around a donation aspect to, obviously behind the purpose and the power of this campaign, also do a bit of good. And it was covered widely in the press, but Absolut's only continued that responsibility platform. And, that's going to become, a really kind of hallmark of that brand's integrity. So kind of to your earlier point, Rob, about doesn't everybody want to jump in? We've really been working hard, whether it's something like Jameson's, advocating as an Irish whiskey for, taking the afternoon off and finding that moment of connection with the people that you care about, or it's Absolut, taking a stand within the industry. Those are things that, frankly, this time during COVID has given us a lot of pause to try to make real.
Yeah, oh, that's amazing. I love that. I think one of the things that's come out of the last year and a half is, so many things have evolved and adapted and fast forwarded at lightning speed. And one of the things that I thought was really cool when we caught up last week was that the new role that you took at Pernod was a very recently created function, marketing enablement function. We would love to hear a little bit more about that. I guess how that came about, and then how you ended up being the person who took the role.
Sure. So marketing enablement is a new function at Pernod. My organization is responsible for building strategic capability in all things media, in-house content creation, marketing technology, and consumer data strategy. So wide remit, but tons of interdependencies, of course, and intersections. So we are here, to make sure that we are delivering the most demand-driven, precision-activated experiences for consumers. When we go back to that concept of return on responsibility, data and analytics for us are in service of enabling a better consumer experience, right? They're the means, not the end. We have done an inordinate amount of proprietary research and insight generation on, where our brands have that right to win, the kinds of emotional and functional attributes of the brands, what consumers' need states are, to try to marry them up and, really activate in a way that is authentic and relevant and measurable and accountable to business outcomes. So that's my team's role. We are building rapidly, working with all of our agency partners, whether it's Wavemaker or UEG or Weber or the marketing arm, as well as our creative partners like Ogilvy, to really make what marketers talk about so much a true reality. And for us, it was critical that we take a very kind of portfolio-wide, centralized approach. Certainly for something that's going to get into such deep areas of expertise, and that we're here to make sure all of our marketers are armed with those tools, those techniques. So yeah, that's what we do in a nutshell. I can't say it's an easy gig, but it's certainly a rewarding one.
Challenging and rewarding. That's what we want, right?
Yeah. So we we're looking to now put a lot of that into action, right? We've done the heavy lifting, we've done the homework, we've done the insight generation, we've done the analytics. And we're now in market using those insights to inform our content strategy, our creative strategy, and our media strategy. They're not separate. We're looking at them holistically.
Perfect. I mean, I think that's a great segue when you mention the data part of it and using that data to inform those strategies. Is there anything, any tips or tricks that you can give the audience here, or ways that you're using that data to inform those strategies that are either back to the basics and like, hey, let's just look at it that way, or is there something really, of course, not sharing anything proprietary, but is there something really cool and interesting that you're doing to inform those strategies from the data standpoint?
Yeah. So when we started with the kind of that insight and analytics exercise, and we really started to unpack what drives consumer choice, right? That took a lot of heavy lifting to unpack, and we came to a very clear conclusion that your context, so your life stage, where you are, who you're with at any given moment, coupled, with your needs, what you're looking for, either functionally or emotionally, they're more predictive of what beverage you're going to choose than your identity, than your demographics, right? You're not one thing, Rob. I'm not one thing. We're dimensional people, right? The way that you and I might decide what to drink at a business dinner can look different than how we unwind after a long day, looks different than what you reach for after a round of golf, right?
Sure.
That context is critical. And because of modern, media and marketing capability, we're able to translate that context into data signals and inventory that we can activate against. So for us, we're leaning heavily into contextual targeting. And I would say that unlike a lot of advertisers who have it as a tool in their toolbox, but I would say activate kind of peripherally or on the surface, we've got a unique set of contextual understanding and data signals by brand, right? And those are distinct from one another. And when you think about the fact that, again, my life stage and who I'm with and where I am is more predictive of my choice, what that means then is that you're able to meet me in my moment of need with the right brand, with the right cocktail strategy, right? As I change life stages, as I change context, I'm able to trade consumers up throughout our portfolio. I'm able to introduce specific types of innovation to them. And I think that, that's a lot more predictive of their behavior and a lot more demand driven than a cookie. So it took a lot of heavy lifting to get there. I mean, my advice is, while obviously the industry, readies itself, for what will just continue to be, we believe, an increasingly kind of private consumer landscape, that's not, in our opinion, meant to be fought. Again, like, we're here to do best by the consumer. We want to respect their boundaries and their privacy, and putting the most relevant offer, message, promotion in front of them, that's our job, right? It's not to act first in the service of our revenue and think about the consumer after. So we're very bullish on this strategy. Of course, first party does play a role. We have been at that game for a long time, but it's much more useful for us. For instance, if I already understand a bit about who you are and some of your preferences and past purchase behavior, it's much more useful for things like cross-sell versus new acquisition, et cetera. So we've got a pretty well mapped out role of what data fuels what consumer outcomes in what circumstances. And we're just in the process of starting to test and learn our way through that. I mean, advice-wise, like, it's never done, right? But we are in an environment here that supports, rigorous hypothesis generation. And then we learn, we iterate, and we continue. So I think what's exciting is to see the intersection of that methodology really impact content, creative, and media. We're building a studio in-house. We want to be, able to fulfill the types of volume and variation that our consumers are looking for.
Right.
So, leaning heavily into a more robust kind of DCO suite of assets, social assets, commerce assets that can meet the needs of the consumer in a hyper relevant way. So we're looking to really leverage that approach across the entire journey, omni-channel at its broadest. How do we link to what perhaps we use to prime you or nudge you with that and what you experience inside of a Kroger or a Total Wine or a, independent liquor chain. So we're pulling that thread all the way through. And I think that's important for consumers too. Consistency is important.
Absolutely. I mean, that consistency, in Undertone, we do the same thing. We really believe in trying to get that personalized message to the consumer at the right place at the right time through that creative lens, because you really want to evoke that emotion from them, especially with products like you guys have in your portfolio. You want to get that emotional response. And when you can deliver that personalized experience to your consumers, and if you can do it at scale, even better. But yeah, it absolutely makes sense. And I love the cross-sell part of it, because I think that if you're able to connect with the consumer on one brand and able to then get a message in front of them that's going to entice them to try another brand, that's the holy grail right there.
Yeah. And look, it's not, advice wise, it's like we're all on a journey. There's really no end. And the funny but exciting thing about this industry is just when you think you figured it out, it changes again.
Yes.
But I think that's a gift. I think that's great. It keeps us all sharp and on our toes. And I think for us, when you really do think about unlocking the magic of human connection and things like that, we have to remember at our core that our business is incredibly human. And no matter how sophisticated we get from an analytics perspective or a data perspective, we have to harness some of that timeless understanding of what drives consumer behavior. We just activate it in a much more sophisticated way sometimes, right?
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
our industry loves to herald the death of things, right? Oh, this is dead, this is new. Everything's in play for a given purpose, for a given objective. And I think it's okay to have a very robust toolkit and just to have clarity about what you're reaching for and when.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. So, fueled by what's happened over the past year and a half with COVID, e-commerce has grown exponentially, not just in the liquor category across the board, but specifically the liquor. It's been e-commerce sales, it's been apps, it's things like Drizzly, ordering your liquor, having it delivered to you while you're working at home. I mean, it's it can be pretty seamless. So how has that helped you guys, or how has it adapted your marketing strategies, the media channels you're using in order to deliver on your own internal e-commerce goals? And then how is that different from the way that you were looking at that? I know you weren't there pre-pandemic, but maybe from just a corporate standpoint, how is that different than the way you looked at it before?
To your point, the acceleration has been absolutely massive. When you think about wine and spirit sales online, I think they're growing something at like 2 to 3 times the rate they were versus the prior year, and those consumer behavior shifts, we anticipate will be sustained, right? You probably remember, Rob, there were a bunch of these panels and articles and interviews. Remember at the beginning of the pandemic, our entire industry was trying to forecast what the lasting impact of it would be. And we were so naive because we had no idea, unfortunately, how long it would go on.
Yeah.
We all think about, Gladwell and, 10,000 hours makes you an expert. And how long does it take to kick a bad habit or form a new one? 16 months later, we formed some new habits.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're not going anywhere. So, we've seen literally as an industry a 4x growth in the number of consumers who are buying us online. Our retail outlets are expanding, click and collect's expanding. So we've had to pivot, incredibly quickly. We have built out a robust team internally. They are partnering very closely with all of our commercial marketing and brand marketing, whether it's, Drizzly partnerships, or whether it's talking to our customers in a different way about how we're going to activate with them. We go to our customers. They don't want to see, oh, this is what we're doing, on your site, but here's what we're doing in your store. And Joe does that and Dan does that, right? They want one holistic point of view about how we're leaning in and how we're going to be where consumers are to stimulate demand for our brands and their channels. So I think what's important for us is, again, when we think about how that manifests across the consumer journey, that we're not sending confusing signals, right? So how does the creative experience, how does the literal message offer combination evolve to be most relevant but not feel disconnected? We're working with our media partners to understand, we don't want someone to, see an Instagram post that's supporting, let's say, a Jameson campaign, and then, 2 minutes later get hit with a Drizzly ad followed by a, right? And our industry is, that's always been a stumbling block for us, right? And it's a huge opportunity, I think, to refine again. Who are we serving a message to? Why do we believe we have a right to serve them that message at that point in time? But yeah, it's certainly a challenge. I mean, especially in our industry, right? Like a lot of retailers outside of, I would say, grocery or BevAlc or CPG are quite sophisticated. But, in many instances, we're dealing with independents or legacy systems or, not obviously retailers not always sharing data with us. So it's something that we're working on. And I think, aside from just a presence, of course, in commerce, it's strong and robust. We're really trying to determine, what does that long-term consumer nurture look like? Why a Pernod brand, right? Why versus a competitor? How do we start to engender more of that, not loyalty, because consumers are promiscuous and they're always going to try new things and be swayed by new offers, and that's okay. It's a bit of the nature of the beast. Sure. But how do we develop a little bit of nurture and a value proposition that tethers them a little more closely to us? And I think it's what you said. It's like you've got to hit both those functional notes as well as those emotional notes. Know when they're looking for value, know when they're looking for values. Is it sex responsibly, or is it $5 off their favorite tequila? So we need to architect that choice, is what we call it. With precision, and yeah, I mean, look, the U.S. is on track to be the global leader in BevAlc, so here to stay. Yeah. And I think so much runway to refine that consumer experience.
Oh, that's great. I love that. All right, so I think we have time for one last question, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. We talked a little bit about this the other day: diversity and inclusion. More important than ever. We here at Undertone just launched a new initiative yesterday called the Uplift Collective, which is helping support our publisher partners that are minority and female owned to portions of the media buys that go to them will go to get donated to charities of the client's choice, and just really trying to lean in and do everything that we can to support. And I think we're all wondering, what are you guys doing as a company, both within your marketing and as a company, to hit on those areas?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's so much. So more broadly at the company, we have a commitment to supplier diversity. So that's something that we're going through across our entire supply chain, right? From a media standpoint, very timely. I was just posting about it on LinkedIn. We're happy to partner with Group M on their media inclusion initiative. So a series of their clients that are committing a percentage of their media investment behind Black creators and Black media owners, right? And definitely trying to make sure that our media investment is not only reaching our consumers, but resonating with them authentically, right? And the diverse content creation, along with the diversity of content and programming, goes hand in hand. So that's a huge one for us. Globally, our company launched a global D&I function in 2021. So that was an important, I think, demonstration to our commitment, and it's something that we're really on the fast track with, I would say, in North America. We're recruiting a leader for that now. We've also got a new addition to our marketing organization. We went through a very big restructure that brought me in February, and we've been able to put in place a multicultural and inclusive marketing function, right? So we want to make sure that our commitments are actually organizationally and operationally wired, that our money is getting spent in the right places, that we're tracking our progress. So between, I think the global platform at Pernod, a lot of what Anne, our CEO, has been very, very vocal about in terms of her commitment to an incredibly inclusive company here in North America. We've created new ERGs, a resource group for veterans. We've got, I believe, 6 now, LGBTQ, Pernod Noir, Mosaic, so many initiatives that have kept people connected as well as we've been apart. Right. And people really look to that. For a company that I joined during the pandemic, I was so overwhelmed by meeting new colleagues who told me that more than anything, they missed being with one another, right? In an incredibly social business that lends itself to connection, they felt more alone, I think, than many of us felt, and we all felt it. So yeah, that's a bit about what we've been doing.
That's amazing. I think there's so many good things there, so many great initiatives. Well, thank you so much. I think we probably have time for one quick question from the Q&A here. There's a couple in here. So let's go with this one. When it comes to communicating with your consumers, how do you think about your brand purpose, and how does that impact your approach to the marketing?
That's a great question. What's been a real collaboration exercise is, as we went through all of that kind of foundational insight and analytics about why consumers reach for our brands and when, we've had to then go back and rework a lot of our creative strategy, right? So I think that that's been, foundational. In terms of purpose, from, the good of society, I think that all of our brands manifest in different ways. And I think we're careful not to jump onto any kind of bandwagon, if you will. We've got a very clear purpose platform at Pernod with regard to return on responsibility, what we believe it means to be creators of conviviality, to our larger role in fostering authentic human connection. And then we've been leaning into, for instance, a brand like Absolute, which has taken up a bit more of an advocacy with Sex Responsibly. There was also, we'll be launching another chapter of the blank responsibly soon, that's very much geared toward, as we re-enter the world post-COVID, how do we behave? So I think it's an individual exercise, but it's supported by a strong company point of view. And I think for us as a large portfolio of brands, leaning into Pernod's purpose has been one of our biggest opportunities.
That's great. And then I guess we have a little bit more time. I'm going to jump back into one more question for us. I think, one of the things we talked about was industry trends. And I know you talked a little bit about pivoting your portfolio across key industry trends on your end, and things that you're seeing emerge in the marketplace. Is there some couple of things there that you could give us a few tidbits of information on?
In terms of, look, there's been so many trends. One that's specific to Bev Alc that we're really thinking hard about now is, as we all sheltered in place in the pandemic, our consumers are very resourceful, right? So that amazing cocktail that you used to go to your local bar or mixologist to make, people figured out how to make it at home, and they wanted to hack to go with it, right?
Yeah.
People have built amazing wet bars and fire pits and entertaining spaces. And that at-home entertaining trend, we think, is here to stay. It doesn't mean that people aren't going to go back to bars and restaurants. Of course they are. We can see that starting to happen. But that kind of, again, like new behavior that was seeded out of necessity has been a real source of enjoyment for a lot of consumers. So we're trying to think about, especially with such a large portfolio of brands, how do we keep consumers engaged with them? And the cocktail strategy aspect is really seeing a huge part of our attention. And the other that was a bit born of COVID, or COVID accelerated it, is ready to drink cocktails, right? Everybody wants it ready to go. Take it with you, take it on the go, drink responsibly, but enjoy it. So a lot of our innovation is focused right now on helping deliver what is that new expectation around ready to drink cocktails that are delicious.
Right. Yeah. And you talk about the at-home cocktail making. Even from our perspective in this industry, we utilized it during the pandemic as a client entertainment tactic. We would hire a mixologist. Everyone's getting on the Zoom. send everyone the ingredients that they need. And now all of a sudden we're all experts in making some crazy cocktail or two that we had never made before. And it was also a fun experience to do that. So I do think that the at home making of unique and cool cocktails is something that is going to be here to stay as well.
The other thing consumers really leaned into is this larger trend of premiumization, right? So without being able to necessarily, go out, how could they recreate a restaurant experience at home? And they kind of reassess their entire value equation. And a lot of our whiskey portfolio, our agave portfolio. Cognac is growing 2 times faster than total spirits. I mean, consumers have really, really leaned in to explore the total breadth of our category, and this trend toward premiumization continues. So yeah, you can go to a friend's house now and have a restaurant experience at home, and people, I think that's here to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you mentioned earlier, you talked about, that it can be a little bit of a promiscuous industry where people are trying new things and going to new brands. Do you find, or do you think that people are going to go back to their trusted brands during this? Or do you think that trend of everyone kind of trying lots of different things is here to stay? Or a combo of both? And I'm sure you win on both sides, right? You get the people that are now trying your products that never had before, and vice versa.
There's definitely been a return to trusted brands. But in general, our category, like other categories, right? Consumers have a repertoire, right? And there's constant innovation in the category. So we know that people are going to, and certain consumers more so than others, they like to experiment, they like to try new things. It fulfills a little bit of a sense of exploration, a sense of adventure. Sometimes it really is a match for their identity. So it's a combination of both. And I think just understanding, again, like, that notion of context and needs being more predictive of choice than your identity is what helps us look at this vast portfolio and kind of the variety of the trends at play and know what to kind of put front and center and when.
Right. Yeah. No, that absolutely makes sense. All right, we have one more question from the chat, and then I think we'll be able to get wrapped up here. So, an anonymous attendee, how do you promote authenticity within your purpose-driven marketing strategies?
That's a great question. We're thinking about it a few different ways. I think if you go back to what I was speaking about earlier with regard to supplier diversity, and a lot of our multicultural marketing efforts, I mean, if you look at the numbers, as an industry, we're underinvested in the touch points that multicultural consumers favor. We're underinvested digitally overall against multicultural consumers, and we're significantly underinvested in bespoke content creation for multicultural consumers. So for us, I mean, authenticity and purpose, if I had to put it in a phrase, it's about resonance, not reach. The tools in our industry are outdated, and they are not sophisticated enough broadly to measure our real impact, right? We can all spend money and create a campaign and run a reach curve and clap our hands and say we did a good job. We reached 60%, we reached 70%. Yeah, but did it matter? Right? Awareness is a funky word. I think it's one that we try to stay away of. It's a very vague objective. There's many things, Rob, that you and I are aware of. It doesn't mean we care about them, and it doesn't mean that they resonate. Right. So I think it's really the combination of the content, where in your world the content appears, how personalized it is. All of that drives authenticity and reinforces the brand purpose. And that purpose can be anything from, very serious to very, fun and open. It doesn't always have to be a social justice topic per se, as important as those are, as long as the brand is authentically delivering against what the consumer wants and needs. So I think it's not a one size fits all. And we need to think really about resonance beyond reach, because we can lie to ourselves all day and say, we spend money there and we support that and we donate and we this, but it's the entire experience and how it drives your brand.
Right. I love resonance beyond reach. I love that. I think that's really strong. It's so great to see you in your office. I love it. I'm jealous. I was saying earlier, I have my first actual business trip coming up, jumping back on a plane again for the first time since last March next week. And it's nice to see everything start to come back and see people going out and enjoying a cocktail and getting things going, both from a friend standpoint and obviously family, but also in our industry, the client entertainment part of it, and seeing that go. And your company ties all of that together, which is really great. So I really really thank you for your time today and all of the great nuggets that you gave the audience. I think there's some really cool things that we can dig in there, and not only if someone's in the alcohol category and the spirits category, but really adapted and adjusted to whatever verticals they're in as well. So, thank you so much for your time. Anything else you want to leave us with?
No, I just have everyone, be good out there, be safe, and enjoy a Pernod cocktail responsibly. We're here for you, and I think everybody looks like we as an industry and as the U.S. have some good things to start to look forward to. So raise a cocktail in celebration of that.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Kristen. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you to both of you. Before you go, Kristen and Rob, great job moderating as well. I love, I mean, we've heard a lot of sessions here through our Brand Innovators live casts, certainly over the last 18 months, but even in many live sessions before that. And I've never seen somebody speak about marketing insights in the way you just spoke about marketing insights, because it's not just about the brand and the penetration and how many people know about us. All of those are good things, but like you said, unless the story is consistent, your consumers will call you on that. And they absolutely will, and they have. And I think for